Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome back for another episode of the Networking RX podcast. This is Frank Agan, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections. I certainly want to thank the listeners, but I want to also thank the people out there who give me ideas for programs. Back in February, it was actually late February, I was forwarded an article. Someone forwarded me an article. That goes to show you just kind of a backlog of information I have to work with respect to putting this podcast together. But someone forwarded me an article, and the article was written by Falan Funtami. I hope I did a good job on that. At any rate, this was Forbes Online, dated February 15th, and the title of the article was 3 Steps to Maximize the Strength of Your Network. I found it to be a very insightful article, insightful in a number of ways. I'm not going to read the article to you. I'll provide a link to the article in the show notes, so you can read it yourself. It's a relatively short article, but Falan, what she gets into are 3 things that we touch on from time to time here, but she includes in it research. And the point she tries to make into it that our network is akin to our muscular system, and that if we exercise it and exercise it appropriately, we're just going to make it that much better. And so she brings up 3 tactics, 3 ideas, 3 strategies that can help us, as she says in the title, maximize the strength of our networks. So the first one is bridging silos. As she says in here, when we look at our network, we tend to be laser focused on our first degree connections, and we often don't take the time to evaluate second, third, and higher degree connections. And she's not necessarily referring to LinkedIn, although that applies. But what she goes on to say is that effective networkers tend to manage what she calls the white space in their networks, looking outside the silos that they have, and the silos being the first degree connections that they have, and looking beyond those silos and building bridges outside of those silos. This is a little bit different than the program I did a few weeks ago, episode 63, Networking Lessons of the Kevin Bacon Game. In that program, I talked about to be successful with respect to networking, we need to try and live in different worlds. We need to have a social life. We need to work, obviously, within business, be involved in the community, and have different things that we touch on. What this is talking about is looking at the network you have, seeing who you're connected with, and then asking yourself, okay, who are those people connected with? I know person X, and I can see where they might be connected. I know this person through this community organization that I'm in, and I can see that where they're connected. And LinkedIn is wonderful for this, because if you're connected to somebody on LinkedIn, you can look and see the different types of people that they're connected to. So you see person X and you see, wow, they're connected in this particular arena that you want to be better connected in. You could actually go to that person and say, hey, could you help make some introductions for me? So that's what they talk about with respect to what she talks about with respect to bridging silos. And she references some research that was done by Robert Cross, who's with Babson College, and that research reveals that people who bridge subgroups are significantly more likely to be in the top 20% of their organization, as measured by performance reviews. So people who are actually trying to build these bridges, get outside of their silos, and expand their network beyond just the people they know here and now are much more likely to rise to the tops of their organizations or their industries or their professions. So the first step to maximizing the strength of a network is bridging silos. The second thing she talks about there is measuring value. And she makes a point early on in this particular segment. We measure everything. We measure steps, we measure life expectancy, we measure sales, we have quotas. People measure all sorts of different things anymore, customer satisfaction, so on and so forth, cost of conversion. Very few of us take the time to measure the strength of our networks. Now, if you have been with us since the beginning, if you go back to episode 6, we did an episode on valuing networking capital, valuing social capital. So go back and take a listen to that, and that'll give you some insights onto my thinking. But there are really 3 ways of looking at valuing our networks. One, you can stop and take a look at the people that you know, and I term that as the connectivity of our network. So that's the first thing. The second thing you can look at and try and value is what I call density, the density of your network. And what that really drives at is, of the people you know, how many of those people know each other? So if you have a network of 20 people and they all know each other, it's very dense. But if you have a network of 20 people and none of those people know each other, it's not quite so dense. And you want to have a network that's not dense, because that has more opportunity long term. So that's a second way of measuring. A third way of measuring is looking at the potential, looking at the people that you're connected to, and then looking beyond that, getting back to what Phelan talks about and getting outside of our silos. Our potential is looking and saying, okay, I know this person and they have a tremendous opportunity with the people that they know. They're a linchpin or a connector into the entire franchise world or into the entire SEO world. And so those are the 3 ways that I have looked at trying to measure this. What I thought was interesting in the article is she talked about, she referenced back to Robert Cross again and research that he had, and again, he's with Babson College. He revealed in his research that between 3% and 5% of the people in your network account for 20 to 35% of the value. And very interesting if you stop and think about it, because if you can get a sense as to who are in that 3 to 5%, those are the people that you want to devote your time to. Those are the people that certainly provide opportunity for you. I think there's a lot of value in what she's saying and trying to measure your network and really looking at it from maybe not just a dollars and cents standpoint, but some sort of value, some sort of point system. The saying out there is that which gets measured gets acted upon. And to the extent that you're coming up with numbers, however you choose to do it, I don't know that there's a right or a wrong answer, however you choose to do it, or there might be a right answer or a better answer, and we'll do that in a future podcast. But however you choose to do it, being consistent, and once you act upon that and know what those numbers are, that's going to inspire you to help improve those numbers and increase the strength of your network at the same time. The third thing she gets at, identifying the energizers in your network. And I guess conversely, identifying the de-energizers. We all have people in our networks that emit a certain energy. I'm not talking electrical energy, but they're just people who are just good to be around. They're people who, and I don't want to say, she says this in there, they're not necessarily overly charismatic. They're not necessarily extroverted, but they seem to have lots of connections and they seem to get things done. They seem to be able to move things forward. They seem to, I guess the word I would use, have a fair amount of influence within their network. And then there are other people who are de-energizers and they don't necessarily have influence. Well, here's the reality, is that you can only have so many people within your network. You can only have so many people. Some people say we all have about 250. There's research out there that says the number's about 150. We'll talk about that in another episode. But you can only have so many people in your network. It's like a dance card. You can only have so many people on your dance card. And so what you want to do, and what she drives at in the article, is stop and take a look at your network and say, okay, who are the energizers and who are the de-energizers? And you need to try and do what you can to have more of these energizers within your network and less of these de-energizers. But more or less the best thing is just to have a sense as to who is who and what is what with respect to your network. Again, Energizers are the people who are going to have influence. They're going to be able to help us bridge silos. They're going to help us to make introductions. They're going to help us increase the value of our network. So to the extent possible, we want to have as many Energizers in our network as we possibly can. Again, great article. The link's in the show notes. I would take the time to read it, maybe reach out to her. Finally, to wrap up, I want to remind people that AmSpirit Business Connections has a unique franchise opportunity. It involves helping small businesses and professionals become more successful through a referral-based networking program. It only involves a couple hours a day, a few days a week, and would be a great franchise for an attorney, accountant, realtor, business coach, consultants of various kinds, for these people to add on to what they're already doing and become better networked at the same time. Why just be a renter when you can own the building? Why just be in a business network when you can own the business network? If you or someone you know would like to learn more, please contact me using the email at the end of this podcast or the one we've provided in the show notes.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.